If you enjoy taking landscape photos but don't really know how to edit them, this video could be a good one for you. I'm going to be editing this photograph taken in the Catlins in New Zealand and transforming it into this. And I'm going to be doing that with some basic editing tools and a little helping hand from Luminar's AI. My name's Anthony Turnham and I'm a professional photographer. On this channel I share photo editing tips and skills. So if photo editing is your thing, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you guys don't have a copy of Luminar AI yet, I've got a discount code @Sky10 and a link in the description below so you can grab yourself a copy and follow along. Before I start any edit, I like to analyze my photo to consider any potential problem areas and things I would like to fix with the edit. Now, top left, the sky is pretty much bleached out, so I'll need to bring back some of that lovely cloud detail. On the right hand side where the tree is here, we're losing a lot of information into this dark blackness here, but there was actually a lot of interesting texture going on with the tree. As I work my way around the frame, we've got these strands of grass just going over the face of this little rock here, and I find that just a little visually distracting. And talking distractions around the edge of the frame, we've also got this little area here, just this little dark nubby, and I find that catches my eye dead center of the frame right at the bottom there as well, so potentially cropping that out would be a good solution. And the main part of the photo that I want our viewer to look at is right in the core of the valley here. I find this little area really intriguing, and the way I've framed it, pretty much dead center. It's surrounded by other objects and we're just kind of led into this little central area. So anything that I can do to help this little zone just pop out a little bit more, be a little bit more visually commanding, I'm going to do it. In general terms, I find the color balance just a little bit too much on the cool side. And from a creative perspective, I feel that we just need to give this photo a little something, a little je ne sais quoi. And in my opinion, there's no better tool out there to do that than Luminar AI, because we've got all of these creative tools right here. But let's start our editing right at the top here with the Enhance AI. Basically, if I grab that slider, crank it to 100, I can say, good night, thank you, I'm done. As is often the case, the Accent AI slider has basically solved a multitude of sins with our raw image, and the fact that that one slider corrects so much is why I strongly recommend this photo editor for new photographers, people just getting started with editing, because you can get such a helping hand with your photo edit just with this one slider, and then when you want to take things just a little further, you can start exploring more and more of the tools as your confidence grows. While I enjoy the improvement that this is doing, I don't want to put this at 100% and kind of leave it there. I want to do more of the changes manually myself, so I might just tease some of this in. Beyond that, the sky enhancer is likely to do us a big favour, and it sure is. Basically, it's increasing that contrast between the clouds and the sky, and also saturating that blue just a little bit more. I'm a big fan of looking at our before and our after, so as I go through and add the tools, you'll see me do this a lot, just flick between the two. The next thing I'm going to look at is another power tool, and that'll be Structure AI. I'm thinking if I grab this slider and push it up, we're going to be able to bring in some information and just a little bit more visual detail and interest around through this central area. So let's do that. I'm never afraid to push my mount slider to 100, and although it's very, very rare that I would ever use it at that absolute amount, what I like to do is just push it there just so that I can see exactly what it's doing and what it's doing in different areas of the image. I'm always letting my eye just sift around the canvas and analysing the changes that a particular tool is making. And when you do that, it's very easy to see the changes that are being made, and then you can make that judgment call on what you like, what you don't like. And that's when we're able to start dealing with the brilliance of masks, because we don't want this applied at 100%, probably anywhere in the photo, but we might want to control a stronger amount of it through this central part here where I was saying that I want people to look, but there's other areas that are benefiting from this structure as well, and we can apply different varying amounts of it with the painted mask. So I'm going to grab my brush and I'm going to use an opacity around 1/4, so 25%, a nice big fat brush, and I'm just going to start clicking, and I'm going to drag around the frame and just start to paint this in where I want it. When I let go, you can see the change. So here's our before and here's our after with 25% of this amount now put in. I'm going to come back to the paintbrush so I can increase the amount that this brush is putting in. So I've clicked and I'm painting again, and so now in these areas where I am painting now, we're doubling down on that effect. I'm using my left bracket key to control the size of the brush itself. And now I might just make one more little sweep just through that central area. And if you've gone over any areas that you want to reduce the effect from, you can just get the eraser. And again, with an opacity that's quite low, I recommend always using a low opacity and just build the effect up. But we can now erase that effect from where we don't want it. Okay, let's have a look at our before and after. Here's our before. Here's our after. Nice, we're heading in the right direction. So we've given our image a really nice kickstart with just two tools, the Enhance AI, Structure AI. Next, what I'd like to do is actually open the light panel. And if I expand all of the tabs inside of the light panel, basically we've got access in this one panel to a really powerful raw editor. This is what software such as Lightroom is built all around, just these kind of tools: exposure, highlight, shadows, whites, blacks, curve control, all of that. We've got access to all of it in Luminar. And while some of it may seem daunting, I strongly recommend you get to know this panel. It's super powerful. In this part, we're just going to look at the temperature. If I grab the temperature and push it to the right, you can see that we warm up the whole entire image. By the same token, we can cool things down. So before you start playing around with any of the other color tools, what I'd recommend you do is come in and get your temperature correct inside this panel. So I've just warmed it up ever so slightly, and we can also play with the tint so that we can add a little more magenta or send things more in the green direction. I'm happy with the setting there. Now let's have a look at what else we can do. We can play with the exposure if we want to brighten things up or make it slightly darker. But in this case, I just want to brighten it up just ever so slightly, so we have a brighter, more inviting feel to the photo. Smart contrast is another one of those sliders that's worth just grabbing and having a little play around with. And the highlight slider, if you feel that things are just getting a little bit bleached out in the clouds, for instance, you can just grab that highlight slider and just bring that detail back down. Now, adding some shadow boost may be beneficial for us in this area here on the right hand side of the tree there, where it's very dark, and also just over the trees here that are coming over this hill here. However, here's the problem with this one panel. It's one of the few panels, possibly the only panel, that we cannot actually mask this in where we want it. So for now, I'm not going to worry about the shadows because I don't like the effect that it does through the rest of the photo. If I put that back on, you'll see that it actually brightens up and kind of loses our contrast through the rest of the photo, and we're starting to end up with an image that looks a little bit kind of ugly HDR. I think I will be boosting these shadow details up, but there's a better way to do it where we can actually control how we paint these in. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. So I'm going to come to the local masking feature here, come to add a basic mask, and within the basic mask, we have the option to boost the shadows. So we've achieved the effect that we just had before, but now we have the ability to paint this in only where we want it. So I can click, drag and paint over that particular part of the tree, and I can do the same with the trees on the left hand side here as well. Again, if it's a little bit too much, we can always get the eraser tool and just reduce the amount. I've boosted the shadows, but things are getting just a little washed out, so what I might do is just bring that exposure down a tad and toggle before and toggle after. So we've lifted these shadows, but we've done it much more subtly. Usually I'll do my local masking right towards the end of my edit, but look, as soon as we're in this section, let's have a little bit more of a play around. So we're going to add another basic mask, and what I'm wanting to do here is just a little bit of a controlled vignette. So we do have a vignette tool inside of Luminar AI, and it's a really good version of a vignette tool. However, I'm going to take more precise control by creating my own vignette. So this is allowing me to grab my paintbrush, and just as we've done before, we can click and we can start painting, and that is going to darken down just these areas where I'm painting. So it's kind of like a controlled vignette. It's also like a bit of a controlled dodge and burn. I might apply a little bit up in the sky here as well, just to control the brightness level of the sky. Another reason I like keeping that opacity down low, painting it in stages, is basically I can do a little bit of painting, release the mouse, judge the effect that I've just applied, and then go again with adjustments and refinements. So talking adjustments and refinements, I still want to add a little bit more interest through this central area here, just down into the valley here. So let's add another local mask and just see what changes we can make to do that. I mean, brightening things up certainly helps to bring people's attention to an area. I might also want to warm it up through there as well. And as I'm doing that, I'm starting to have the idea that perhaps I actually want to create a bit of a sun flare coming in from the left-hand side, as if there's sun illuminating this valley down here. Let's also increase the contrast a little bit because things are just getting a little bit washed out down there. Perhaps adding just a little bit of structure as well, not too much. And maybe we want to bring the saturation up. And again, let's get the paintbrush tool so we can paint the effect in just where we want it. And did you see that little pop before and after? Here we go. Here's before, here's after. Let's go again. Let's paint a little bit more of this effect in. So I'll get my brush. I'm going to click, drag, and just paint through here. Bring a bit more detail into those hills in the background as well. Okay, I think we'll leave the local masking there and let's jump back into the editing section. And one thing that's bugging me is these little strands of straw or dry grass here. So I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to come to the erase tool. Normally I'd probably clone things out. I prefer using the clone tool because it's gives you more control in my opinion. But I'm going to give Luminar a chance in this. I'm going to give Luminar's AI the option to do me a favor and just see if it can get rid of these. Let's just try that one bit for now. Hit erase and just see what Luminar does. Not bad. Okay, it's passed the test, so I'm going to push on with this style of erasing. And I'm doing this with my mouse at the moment, and you guys, if you follow my channel, will know that I'm a big fan, big believer in using a graphics tablet. If you're somebody who does a lot of photo editing, then it's well worth getting a graphics tablet, because painting in like this with a mouse, A, it's difficult, and B, it's just not very accurate either. So a graphics tablet, being able to paint as if you're using a pen or a paintbrush is just awesome. I'm asking Luminar to do quite a lot with this erase, but we'll see what it does. I'm picking that it may actually sample from some other areas and perhaps on the rock put some things in that we don't want, but we'll see. Well, that's not bad, and if you didn't know the before and after, I think you'd be pretty happy with that. But if there's some little areas where it's kind of done a bit of a strange thing, I'm just going to go over those one more time and see if it can't do a better job. Okay, we'll call that done. Let's look at our before and our after. Okay, pretty good cleanup considering that was all done with AI and some pretty rough painting. Let's come up to the zoom tool and just go back to fit on screen. And again, check where we've come from and where we are right now. Here's our before, here's our after. By all rights, we could absolutely leave our edit there, and that would be a totally valid call in my opinion. But look, these creative tools are here, and the fact that they're just here, they often call to me. They're like, use me, use me. So what can I do? What can I do? Okay. Because I said I wanted to create the sense of light beaming in from this left-hand side of the frame and illuminating this central part here, what I'm going to do is combine a couple of filters. We've got the atmosphere AI, which is going to give us some fog, some atmosphere in the air, and that is going to show up the sun rays. So let's do this. Let's come in, rather than using fog, I like layered fog. I crank the depth all the way up so that I can see exactly what's going on as I grab this slider and start bringing it up. And this tool just blows my mind how clever it is. The AI that we have, the fact that it can mask things out, it knows that we've got solid foreground objects here, and it knows that we've got a valley. Like when you have a horizon line, the fog starts rolling in from the horizon, but it knows that there are some hills there, and so this layered fog isn't going over the hills. I think that's just so clever. And so we're able to finesse things even more. Again, we've got access to a mask, so we can just paint this in exactly where we want it. So again, let's go with that sort of low amount. A 37% mark is pretty good with me. And maybe just introduce a little bit of that up here on the left hand side, because as I say, I want some rays coming in from that left hand side, so I want it to feel as if there's atmosphere in the sky, a little bit of fogginess that those rays would show up in. While these tools give you the ability to create the fantastical, I think personally when I'm working on an edit, I want things to look believable. So for example, I would never have a sun flare just appearing in the middle of the sky where the sun is not. But I know for a fact, judging by the light formations, that the sun was off camera to the left. You can actually tell that by the shadows. Just the illumination on the tree branch here, tree trunk, sorry. We can see that that was being lit from camera left. I don't want a cool glow, so I'm going to come down here. I'm going to warm the sun up. I'm going to increase the warmth of the rays. I'm not worrying about the fact that it looks a little bit weird, a little bit funky in the sky, because I only want these beams coming through here. So maybe we are just a little bit too yellowy orange there. I don't want rays as such, I just want a nice soft effect bleeding in, so I'm getting rid of the number of sun rays. If you take the overall look to the left, you get a very dark and contrasty look, whereas if you take it to the right, things stay quite bright. And I think I'm going to stick somewhere around the middle, just slightly on the right hand side, the brighter side of things, and I am going to paint this bad boy in. So let's get our brush. Let's bring this down because it's quite a strong effect that I've created at the moment. I'm going to click once and I'm just going to paint into this central part of the frame again. I'm going to use my right bracket key to increase the size of the brush. I'm literally just going to paint this on that left hand side. And as I let go of that there, you just saw that just sort of wash out that left hand side. Might not be your cup of tea what I'm doing here, but basically I'm just trying to show you guys what we can do, what's capable with these tools. Here's our before. Here's our after, and we've got a very distinctive and unique look now. I'm just going to jump into the color section because I'm finding the green just a little bit too oversaturated. So the saturation of the greens, I'm just going to reduce that ever so slightly. And just like with the other tools, I like to take it all away, go to 100%, go to minus 100, just to see exactly what that effect is doing. And I'll bring that down. And a lot of the grass tones will often also reside within the yellows. So it's worth just playing with those as well. If you find that your grass is oversaturated or your trees, that foliage colour might also be in the yellows as well as the greens. So play around with those. I may even shift the hue of this so that we're getting a more orangey warm hue. So if I get the greens, you can see I can push that more towards that orangey brown tone. I don't want to go that far. Colour is very subjective, but I feel that it's creating more of a kind of summertime vibe by making these changes. If I toggle that off and toggle it on, it's more of a muted summertime kind of look. It's okay. Look, one of my favourite things to do when I'm working with colour is to actually come into the mood section and just choose an appropriate LUT. And you can see as I flick through these, we really can change the mood, hence the name of the look of the photo. And you know, you might really like this look, say for example for Anaheim, but I want to find something that's just a little bit warmer. So Santa Barbara I think works quite nicely. The hot color punch could be an option as well, but I think I'm going to go for Santa Barbara in this case. And I normally like the amount around 30, but I am going to push this just a little bit heavier in this case. And I did feel that the contrast was just starting to get lost, particularly through here where I've introduced the fog. So I'm going to boost the contrast a little bit and maybe just bring the saturation up overall through the whole photo a little bit too. Let me toggle this off, toggle it on. It's quite strong, isn't it? So I'm just going to bring that back down. I'm feeling like my atmosphere is just a little bit overbaked, so I'm going to grab the amount slider for that. That's none of it. That's introducing it. We were sat right up around that 80 mark. But I'm going to bring this back down just so we're getting a hint of it. There we go. I'm happy with that. And I think for the finishing touch, what I'm going to do is just jump into the mystical filter, because sometimes this can be quite a nice glow filter, but it does it in a very unifying way because it works on the shadows. It also works on the highlights. There you go. That's 100% of it. Gives a very dreamy kind of quality to your image. Again, 100 is way too much. Don't do it, people. Don't do 100. Bring that bad boy back down. We're sat somewhere around that sort of 30 mark is quite nice. Toggle it off. Toggle it on, and it's just softened everything off, but I like the effect. I like how it's done that. So let's have a look at our before and we can see where we've come from. There you go. That's our original capture, our original camera capture. And there's our finished image in Luminar. And what I would strongly recommend you do when you're working in any editor is create your edit and then just take a break from the screen, step away for a few minutes, come back to it, and you'll see it with fresh eyes. And normally the trend will be you'll find that you've overcooked it. So there is a very strong possibility that while I've been compounding one tool on top of another, I've created a look that's just a little bit too much. But the great thing about Luminar is it's not a case of all or nothing. It's not this or this. What we can do is come down to the bottom right, grab that slider, as you guys know who use Luminar, and we can just ease the amount in. So we can say we like what we created, but it is too much. So perhaps we only want around 60% of that edit. And while I haven't taken a break from the monitor to check this, I've got a gut feeling that that is probably a better approach, a better edit than what we had before. So here's our before, here's our after. The very final thing that I want to do is probably remove some of this right hand edge because it's just a little bit heavy on this side visually. It's very strong, very dark on this right hand side, and I also want to remove this little nubby here that I said originally was distracting me. So I'm going to come into Composition AI, and I can grab these handles and move them in, or what we can do is use the actual Composition AI button, click that. And for once, the AI agrees with me. The crop that it's actually created is exactly what I was hoping for. This is exactly where I would have brought my crop to. There we go. That's the crop I'm after. So I'm going to apply it. And that, my friends, is my finished edit. Thanks so much for staying with me, guys. You are one of the good ones. If you've got any questions about the way I edited this, please leave them in the description below. I always do my best to reply to everybody. As I said at the beginning, if you don't have Luminar AI yet, I've got a link in the description below with a discount code as well, and you can help yourself to that. Apart from that, that is about it for the video. So I just want to say thank you very much for staying with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye for now.